Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Central Georgia Focus, Ask Mayor Miller. I'm Liz Fabian, the Civic Journalism Senior Fellow of the Center for Collaborative Journalism and your host for Ask Mayor Miller. Once again, Mayor Miller is joining us to answer your questions, and he does that for us every month here on 13 WMAZ. Mayor Miller, we are nearing the end of summer, and already we're approaching 50 homicides. And you had rolled out the Macon Violence Prevention Program about a year ago. So how is that going, and what specifically is being done?
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of folks tend to ask me that today. The one thing I want people to understand is that the Macon Violence Prevention Program is a long-term approach. We actually didn't roll that out till this year as far as funding those mechanisms and putting things into place. It's truly what it says, Macon Violence Prevention. This is not going to be instantaneously where you stop bullets from flying. It's the first step. It's like when you're building a house, it's that foundation that we're putting together. And we're trying to reach those children that are in school, in elementary school and high school. We're trying to reach those children that have bad choices on picking up a weapon. So I think we need to understand that. This is a long-term approach. You know, it's not very political. Most politicians don't put things into motion that are going to happen after they leave office. But it's important to lay that foundation to make sure that we have some solid things to build on. We're very encouraged about Macon violence prevention. We know we're getting at the root causes. Other things that have to be done now to affect the uptick that we've had in crime and the shootings that we've had lately is there's a small group of people in Macon-Bibb County that create a lot of problems. We know who most of those folks are. The bottom line, when the sheriff arrests those folks, they're going to have to stay in jail until their court case comes up. We see time and time again that people who have committed offenses and had victims across Macon-Bibb County, they're let out of jail within a reasonably short period of time and they reoffend. And this is something that we have to balance the rights of that individual with the safety of our public. And right now that's an imbalance, and folks need to stay in jail until they handle their cases.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the specific programs that have been funded through that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of programs. I mean, we have the Community Foundation of Central Georgia that awarded 25 grants that are getting kids off the street. It's getting mentorships. It's getting help with mental health. It's giving them activities to do, not just playing basketball, but also other things like chess, school. We've been working together with our schools. I think reading books, literacy program that we have. There's multiple avenues that we're taking a holistic approach to this. We have to get to those root causes that cause the crime. We want people to be able to resolve conflict without picking up a weapon, particularly our children. And those are going to be the situations that, had we been put this in place 5 years ago, a lot of these issues with these kids picking up guns would have already been addressed, and hopefully they wouldn't pick up that gun and choose violence over talking something out. So I think it's very important for people to realize that this is a violence prevention mechanism. You still have the aspect of the police. The sheriff has to do their job, and they're doing their job. They're arresting folks. They're having patrols out there with their staffing that they have. And that's just another part of it. It's part of the whole Macon violence prevention, but it's not going to happen overnight. Folks that may talk negative about Macon violence prevention, but we're still having the crime, it's not intended to stop it overnight. It's not going to do that. It's a long-term approach, and we're seeing some early results right now that I'm very encouraged about, and I think we're going to see those as time goes by.
Now, initially, if my memory serves me correctly, a lot of the funding for some of these programs came with American Rescue Funds or COVID-19 relief, other, stimulus, other funding. So is there a process to evaluate what is going to work, and what happens when we don't have that federal funding or grant funding to continue these programs? Do you think these are the type things that the taxpayers will shoulder the burden for later? Local taxpayers, I mean.
Yeah, I don't think the taxpayers are going to have to shoulder any burden. I think that we're doing this, we're going to measure the data. That's one thing. There's no sense of doing all this information without measuring the data. We want to see what works, but we're also looking for sustainability. There's other funds out there, other grants available without using taxpayer money. A lot of this can be funded through foundations, through nonprofits, and we're trying to get the folks up running, sustain the program they have, and look for other funding mechanisms. Also, people are going to take ownership in their own communities, and I think that's going to help out a lot. So we have done some things like people don't recognize that even our blight program, the 200-something houses that we're taking down, that's part of attacking
that's
the
that
issues
old
we have.
broken windows philosophy,
Exactly.
right? That if you take care of those type issues or the blight in a community, that it somehow lifts the spirit of the community. It doesn't have havens for people to commit crimes in isolated areas.
Exactly, and that's the best practices. We also gave $40 million, allocated $40 million over the next 10 years to retain our public safety officers, and that's very important that people know that we put our men and women in blue, we put them first. They got raises the last couple of years. We raised the salary to be more competitive across the state of Georgia since we have a shortage. And we also allocated $40 million, and part of that was based on the fact that we passed the OLAs to make sure we keep the deputies that we do have there. And I think those are some of the things we're doing on the front end. Goes along with everything we're doing with the MVP, and I think if you get to the element where we can, go through the process and get those folks that are the worst in our community in a separate place. And we want them to be rehabbed too, but right now, just too many are reoffending, so we really have to address that issue.
And of course, you also employed the shot spotter technology. Can you give us an update on that, how that program is working, whether you're pleased with it, whether it's something you think that you might renew?
Well, I'm certainly pleased with it. I think the shot spotter is going to be an invaluable tool for the Sheriff's Department. They've asked for it for a long period of time. Once again, you're not going to have things that are publicly available because of security issues to show you some instances. But as things move through the courts, you're going to be able to tell that someone's lives were saved because of the shot spotter. It keeps our police out of harm's way on many occasions. You had some people who show up to the hospital and they've had a gunshot and they can't tell you, or they refuse to tell you where it happened at, and we're able to locate that, locate the cameras in that area. I think we're going to tie that a lot more. So it's going to be something that helps solve some of the crimes, but also I think it's going to save many more lives. We're only, 3 or 4 months into the program right now. After a year, we'll evaluate that, and we have a year-to-year contract with the company.
Of course, we still hear complaints about response times not being where they should in times of emergency. How are we doing in terms of staffing? I know you said that you've allocated that $40 million to keep and retain officers, but how are things going, do you think, in terms of staffing our law enforcement?
Well, I think we certainly still have a shortage. I think the shortage is somewhere around 75 patrols that we could use. The other thing is we're hiring a lot of part-time deputies that used to be with Macon-Bibb County or other places that we're able to hire and put in other positions. A lot of the things we're doing, like increasing code enforcement, giving them more authority to operate some things, take some tasks away from what the sheriff has to do. These vice marts that we've been able to close down completely or make sure they close at 11 o'clock at night, that frees up valuable resources. People don't understand that those 200 and 300 calls, 911 calls that go to these particular locations keep our police way too busy. These overdoses that we have at some of these hotels that we've been challenged with, we file a nuisance on, those are pulling valuable resources. As we continue to eliminate those things, as we continue to allow the sheriff to do the E911, you're going to see those response time get better. Certainly it's never going to be exactly where we want it because there's just simply not enough people who want to be in this national environment a deputy these days. So we're going to continue to do what we can do to staff, but also we have to figure out ways not to make an excuse because you're poorly staffed and look for other ways that we can improve the service that we have in our community.
All right, Mr. Merrill. Well, when we come back, we'll discuss the homeless issue again and find out what's being done here to help people who are living on our streets. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus, this month's Ask Mayor Miller edition. And of course, Mayor Lester Miller of Macon-Bibb County joins us now to talk about the issues affecting our community. And one of that, I think a lot of people notice, is the amount of homeless people on our streets. And Mr. Mayor, since we met this last time, the Macon-Bibb Emergency Management Agency, working with the Bibb Sheriff's Office and nonprofits like the Brookdale Resource Center and Salvation Army, cleared out another homeless encampment there off of Spring Street in Riverside that was kind of behind the gas station and over by J&J Seafood. So, it was just a couple months ago where y'all cleared the area behind that and people just kind of shifted into the vegetation there. That vegetation's not there anymore, but yet there are tents set up now up underneath the I-16 exit ramp there. So can you tell us what you're trying to do in terms of those people who obviously don't accept the shelters that are available to them?
Well, that's a good question. People may not accept that the first time. May not accept it the second time. There are some people you basically have to hit rock bottom before you accept it at all. So many of those people that we had in the very first issue we had over there have salt treatments, have went to Brookdale, have went to other places, have left Macon-Bibb County. So we continue to see the numbers shrink, although people may not believe that because they see them more regularly out there. I mentioned this before, as you clear up the vegetation, as you have a $550 million project in the center of our community, right there on the interstate, it's going to become more visible. We have Brookdale that's able to take everyone over there. The DCA numbers show that Macon-Bibb County has decreased in our unhoused, and that's something that we can be proud of. We still have a problem with chronic homelessness. We do have a plan in place that we think is going to be very successful on a long-term plan. We're working in conjunction with Brookdale as well as United Way on a long-term solution where we can bring a company in that's shown success across the United States, whereby they tackle the most severe chronic, the top 20 to 30%, and we get them into housing, wraparound services. Some of that is voluntarily, not just involuntary. And they'll basically be set with somebody there managing their money and managing their operations. They've been very successful in getting people that you normally would not think to go into a place because they still have their freedoms. Once we get that taken care of, it leaves us with about 60 or 70% of the other folks that we simply believe we can handle. We're putting policies into place at Brookdale and other places to lift everyone up to take care of those that are most in need. I think people also have to understand that there are many different types of homelessness, people that experience homelessness. Not everyone you see on that corner holding a sign asking for money or aggressive panhandlers, those folks are not necessarily homeless. And I think we have to distinguish that. We also have some folks, we have 33 kids at Brookdale. People typically don't think of that person being homeless, but we're taking care of those kids, making sure they still get a good education with the school system and making sure most of them have single mothers there and we're helping them get back on their feet. So I think you have to take a very holistic approach. I don't see it just moving from one place to the other because every time we have one of these, it's for health and safety concerns. People don't need to live in this environment. We're being very upfront with them. We reach out to them, offer them all the services that we can do over a period of time. We see the numbers shrinking, so that means we're helping some folks along the way.
Now, I learned in this last trip out to the camp that there's actually a mayor of the homeless community. Did you realize that, and have you had a conversation with that person? Or?
Well, there's always someone who has all the institutional knowledge that's been there for quite a while, and every community like that, whether it's Macon-Bibb County or whether it's different sects in Macon-Bibb County, have someone that they call the mayor or the person that has all this knowledge. So I've met several who call themselves the mayor. Certainly, it's not a place I think people want to be, strive to be. Anytime we have women and children there, it's of a public safety concern. A lot of bad things happen, a lot of fires start in those kind of places, and it's just something that's not acceptable, and certainly in 2022, we should not allow that to happen. So we're going to continue to reach out, to minister to them, to try to take an approach that's going to get them back in the best that they can do. That's going to include a jobs program. That's going to include the mental health treatment, the drug addiction treatment, helping our veterans that we continue to do. I don't think it's just shuffling from one place to the other. We do have a long-term plan, but every situation is different, and we've got to understand what we're dealing with. We do have a very detailed RFP out there now as a homeless count that we're working on to find out not just where the people are coming from, but what are their issues and how can we address those so we can put our programming based on the needs of the people that need it the best.
I know that came up with the County Commission, but you also mentioned Georgia Department of Community Affairs and their point-in-time count that was conducted not too long ago, and you mentioned that the numbers have dropped. Can you share kind of a ballpark figure? I mean, have they dropped by tens? Have they dropped by how many?
The last time I think we looked at the numbers, there was 190 something, and it went down to 142. That's the unhoused. I think a large part of that is because of the Brookdale, because of some other housing that we're creating here in Macon-Bibb County, and we're going to continue to create housing. You'll see more about that soon, so we can get those folks who need the housing, affordable housing, into a reasonable home within a certain period of time. So I think we're going to take a large approach like that. It's encouraging at one point to see our numbers drop like that, but we're in a pandemic. We're still in a pandemic. Inflation is very high. People that are losing their jobs, and certainly they're playing catch up from what's happened in the last couple of years. So there are a lot of people who are homeless today that never would have thought they'd be in this situation, and we're trying to help those people along the way as well.
Not only is it a health and safety concern, because they were mentioning monkeypox this last time around. I mean, if you had an outbreak, in a camp that spread, who knows, but also we're seeing homeless out on the west side of town too, where the Eisenhower Business Improvement District is trying to, get that area rejuvenated. So are y'all spreading out in that area as well too? Are you moving camps out in other locations other than near downtown?
Well, the camp off of Harrison Road has been it's been moved on 2 different occasions. Very humanely done. Private property for the most part. Requested some services. Once again, it's right off the interstate. When you get on, people travel on the interstate. So when you get to that split at 475 and 75, some people go one way and some people go the other, and they both get off in a town that has things right off the interstate. So it's not unusual to have that there. We continue to help those folks as well. We continue to put the signage there about panhandling and how they can really help people that want to. Our mental health team goes out there on a regular basis, our EMA, to make sure that they got the basic necessities. We also have a pretty good relationship with the Sheriff's Department, make sure that no one's causing any issues there and it doesn't lead to further crime. And our code enforcement is getting very much involved. You'll see over the next couple of months, a lot of those officers have been sworn. Part of their duties is going to be to manage the aggressive panhandling we have and make sure that people feel safe when we get off those exits and near those stores.
And lifelong resident of Macon-Bibb County, Lavelle Burnett, gives you kudos for the great job you've done so far, but she questions the amphitheater. I know you've mentioned that you continually seem to have to defend this project, but Lavelle's point is that event promoters seem to have a hard time filling even the Centerplex venues. So what is the purpose and vision of a 10,000 seat amphitheater? But this is where people, I think, are getting confused because it's not 10,000 seats, right? It's 10,000 capacity. So what is the design? How many seats? And how do you think that this is going to be viable?
Sure. First of all, it's we're the music capital of the world, so that everyone wants to come to Macon-Bibb County to play. We already turn away acts that could bring 8,000 to 10,000 people now. We turn those away because we have no location for them. The people that manage our facilities have done a great job of putting those people where they need to go, but we've turned away many acts. Also, they're going to follow the dollar. I mean, people that want to perform at a location south and north of here, Macon-Bibb County is right in the middle of that. They can pick up an extra act here in Macon-Bibb County. We're already getting calls. We've already spoke to people ourselves. We're looking for that first opening act and many to come. Going to be no problem at all doing that. As far as the amphitheater itself, the seating capacity there in the very beginning, you have a mosh pit that can have about 1,500 people, up to about 3,500 more people in permanent seatings, and you have a large lawn and garden area where you put your lawn chairs and things of that nature, and you have a VIP section of about 500 that's going to be in the suites. So the whole capacity is 10,000. You're not always going to have 10,000 there. But we've also had many instances where the Coliseum or the auditorium was booked up for conventions or maybe a sporting event, and a performer wanted to come to Macon, and we had to turn them away because we had no space for them, and now we'll capture that. There's many since the pandemic that only want to play in outdoor arenas, but Macon-Bibb County Amphitheater is going to be probably the third, almost the second, but the third largest in the state. There's no reason that people want to. We have people that pass us on the interstate to go to Atlanta to go watch people perform. They'll do the same thing in Macon and do it a lot less expensive and not have to travel as far. So we're very encouraged about that. Nowhere else in the state of Georgia are you going to find an amphitheater with two major interstates within a couple of miles and 5,500 parking spaces at the event center. Nowhere. So it's going to be a great thing. Looking forward to it happening. We're about a year away from being able to have our first concert.
Great. Well, you mentioned interstates again, and when we come back, we'll talk with the mayor about his recent summit with the Georgia Department of Transportation to see what's on the horizon for road safety. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us for this edition of Central Georgia Focus, Ask Mayor Miller, with our Macon-Bibb County Mayor, Lester Miller. Now, Mayor Miller, last time you were here, we were talking about you had an upcoming summit planned with the Georgia Department of Transportation because for years people have been crying out for more safety enhancements on the state-managed highway. So can you tell us a little bit about how that meeting went and what the plans are moving forward?
Well, I think it was an open and honest opportunity to have a discussion with the Georgia Department of Transportation. All of our partners were there. Many representatives from the state was there, locally from GDOT was there, as well as our own team. It got everybody in the room, had very frank conversations. We had Commissioner Lucas there as well, and Greg Brown from Pedestrian Safety Review Board, and many of our partners like Charles Brooks, the engineer, and Nigel Floyd. But it gave us a good opportunity to come together to discuss everybody's roles and responsibilities. I think somewhere along the way, we have lost what our job is between the state, between the local, between our MPO here, and I think that gave us an opportunity to understand what is it we can do. Is there some low-hanging fruit that the county can do, even on these state roads, to make things better for our community until we have a long-term plan? What is our midterm goals? What can we do between Georgia Department of Transportation and Macon-Bibb County to put into a comprehensive plan that's going to happen somewhere 3 to 4 years down the road? And what's our long-term plans? What do we see our population shift in Macon-Bibb County, the needs of our community? So we don't just think there's nothing we can do. It gave us some time parameters, explained a little bit about the funding and where the funding may come from to know where these projects are going to come from. And it really instaured a good relationship. We went ahead and scheduled another one. We're going to meet in October again, so we can do this on a regular basis. I think it really brought everyone together on the same page. Everybody left there feeling that their voices have been heard, and we really have a plan to move forward on our roads. All of our roads need improvement over a period of time because they simply wear out. And we have to look at those roads that are best traveled. But GDOT has capability of leveraging their funds with the federal funds that we have. Macon-Bibb County certainly can't spend enough money to fix all the roads by ourselves. They're traveled throughout the area. But we have to really look at it as a partnership and get on the same page. I think we've done that. We focus a lot on pedestrian safety because we know there's about 4 or 5 places in Macon that we have most of our accidents where involve pedestrians getting killed. We looked at some very new and interesting ways that we can solve that without having to get the state involved. We may get their permission to do some things, but there's some things that we can do that you'll see in the very near future along Emory Highway, Shirlington, Pionona, those types of things that we can do to calm the traffic down, perhaps some signage, some paint, some cameras, some lighting, those types of things, even some divided highway types of things we can do to prevent people from turning maybe a left or right that can decrease the amount of accidents we have. With that comes pushback sometimes. People want to make sure that they have input, and they're certainly going to have that. But I think everybody feels really good about where we're at now. It's nice to bring everyone together without having to spend a lot of money on a consultant. When we all work together for a common cause, we understand our roles and responsibility, a lot of great things can happen. So I'm very excited about what comes in the future.
One quick question from our 13 WMAZ partner, Nicole Bailey-Colvin, came in through her about potholes. Who's responsible if your car's damaged when you hit a pothole on a city street?
Well, generally it's not the county. Unfortunately, most people want to, but you know, it really depends on the street. Has there been notice to the county? Did the county have an opportunity to repair that pothole? You know, some of them may be on the state routes that we can't do, that state may be responsible for, but a lot of times people are simply not notified. But that is an issue. I think we have some equipment that's going to be coming that's going to be more of a hot fix instead of the way it's been done in the past. You're going to see a very smooth transition, probably when you know the pothole was there. The way it's been done now and the outdated equipment that's been utilized and the methods that we have there allows rain and other things to kind of get in there and wash it out, so it's not a good situation. So we're certainly working on that. If it's something that, you know, even the Macon Water Authority, we brought them to the equation because a lot of times they're going to be doing stormwater and replacing things, and a lot of times we got to see whose responsibility it is. So notices are very important. Well,
thank you very much again, Mayor Miller, for joining us, and thank you for joining us. And remember, you can have input in this program. Please send your questions about Macon-Bibb County government to mercerccj@gmail.com, and we'll get you some answers next month. I'm Civic Journalism Senior Fellow Liz Fabian at the Center for Collaborative Journalism. Thank you so much for joining us.